So, hello everybody. My name is Trevor Tobias, and today I'm going to bring you a little podcast about, sort of about online learning and its effects on students. And so, I decided to get two guests. We have my sister Megan, and
Hello.
and then we also have my brother Alex.
Heyo.
They're both past school, but they have dealt with online classes pre-pandemic, and I've dealt with them during pandemic. So I feel like we get a nice understanding of how these can affect students. So there's a couple of main points to kind of talk about that I've learned from my research. So, for example, some of the things to talk about is how online classes affect student learning, student mental health, as well as the effect that teacher preparedness for online classes, which is a big thing around the pandemic. So, first, let's just get a general thing. How did you like your online? Did you like your online classes?
Alex, why don't you start?
Yes and no. I had two different types of online classes, just to clarify, when I was in grad school. One was you stay at home and you Skype into a session, essentially. It was an off-brand Zoom, essentially, designed for classes like that. And you would sit in for like a 3-hour lecture, ask questions with the professor and such. And then the other kind, which was the one that I had more frequently, was a lot more akin to the teacher just tells you, go read X, write a discussion on it. You have to reply to your fellow classmates' discussions. I'm sure you're familiar with that kind of thing. And I'll be honest, I like them each differently. I kind of enjoyed the fact that I could essentially get my schoolwork done for those discussion based classes done immediately, though I was contingent on the other students doing their work in a timely fashion in order to report, talk with them, record their response to my discussion or whatever you want to say. But it wasn't that bad, though it did feel I think the best word is dismissive. It felt like the teacher just threw an assignment out there, didn't really care if we were learning about what we were supposed to learn. It just kind of felt like almost like a substitute teacher, where they just kind of hand you work and say, do it, and then pass on. The in-person lecture I liked more, but I don't know. It was nice not having to commute onto campus at like 6 at night until 9 when I would normally have them. But at the same time, it didn't feel the same to me.
Okay, very interesting. What about you, Megan? How were your online classes?
I took one, and it was a US 2 course, and I only took it because I couldn't fit the in-person into my schedule. And just like Alex, this was a discussion-based thing, so the teacher would send us a video of something, and then we would have a prompt we'd have to respond to in 1 to 2 paragraphs, and then we would respond to someone's 1 to 2 paragraphs. And back when this happened, I think I took it in 2017. Oh, I'm dating myself. We didn't have the capabilities of like Zoom. Like, that was so foreign. So the only thing we had for online classes was this discussion-based thing. And I agree with Alex that it felt like a substitute teacher. Like, I don't necessarily feel like I got the same education as I would have in class in person. But I did love the flexibility of it because it was discussion based. It was all on me, and I just had the whole week to do it. So it wasn't this added stress of like, oh, I have to go back to back to back to class. It could be like, oh, I have time here. Let me do my assignments. It wasn't bad. I learned a lot from it, I will say. I just don't know how it would compare to like an in-person thing or like a Zoom lecture.
Yeah, so now that I've been through this whole pandemic thing, I've had fully online. Also, recently we've started doing hybrids in York, which is a half in person, half online. So during the beginning of the week, I'm always online, and at the end, I'm always in person, which is pretty an interesting way to kind of like work around it. But I've had one of the discussion based ones for one of my teaching ones. It was for not student teaching, the one where you like observe classroom observations. That's it, because you kind of can't observe classrooms when everybody's online, shut down, all that. And so they're just like, yeah, here's some discussion posts. Go watch like a YouTube video and then talk about it. And I'm like, I didn't feel like I got very much out of that because also that was definitely my roughest class because no real communication from the teacher. They just posted up assignments, said nothing, and we were just kind of supposed to do them. So that was definitely tough. But I have had some good times with online like Zoom classes, especially one of them which was it was education technology.
Mhm.
And since it's so technology based, it was a very easy transition from in person to online.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So I've had some good times, but discussion based definitely I felt was some of the roughest. Very flexible, but I didn't feel like I got a lot out of it.
Now, to clarify, in my discussion-based classes, the ones that I did with my professors, they didn't even assign us like slideshow to read through, videos to do. They just gave us, read a chapter in our textbook and just called it a day. Like it felt even more dismissive than what you guys were saying. Which is why it felt a lot rougher. Note that this was also grad school, so some of the material was a little bit more advanced than what you might find in like undergrad, and it was still this kind of dismissive hand wavy thing. They said you could contact your professor at any time, but they had very limited hours, and one of my professors didn't even work in this campus or in the
Ooh.
state even.
Ooh.
He actually worked in New Jersey when I was in New York. And note, not New York City for all of you out there, upstate New York. So it was probably about 8 hours worth of driving if I wanted to, go and see this professor in person.
That's great.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
I'm not saying that my experiences overall were negative, just that they were not as positive as I had with in-person learning.
But the one thing I will give online discussion-based learning that I was positive for me was I deal with social anxiety, so I didn't have to deal with the social anxiety of me raising my hand and starting a discussion and seeing like how people would react, and if history people are crazy and they will come at you if they think you're wrong. I didn't have to worry about that. I really didn't. It was just like my opinion was out there, and if they disagreed, I didn't even have to respond to them. So it definitely helped my social anxiety.
Well, that seems like a very good transition to talking about how online education affects students' mental health.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, so, yeah. Well, so from what I've seen through the research, a lot of it has actually been fairly positive when students take control. They become more independent, and they're in control of their own like learning. You go and you do your own discussions at your own pace. That kind of like become independent, and so a lot of people found that be pretty positive, at least for mental health.
Fair enough.
Also, it's always nice when you don't have to wake up for an 8 a.m. and get to class, and you can just kind of roll out of bed and open up the computer.
Oh, Trevor, you live on campus. I had to commute to my school, a straight up commute in the mornings in New Jersey.
Oof.
Nah, if I could have done that at 8 a.m., it would have definitely helped my mental health because you do not get sleep in college. And I would, that extra hour of sleep would have been so needed.
I
Yeah.
sympathize as well. Though admittedly my classes were later in the afternoon to in the evening, and I only had to commute across the street and up a very large hill, but still.
Yeah, this is actually for my 8 a.m. class, but so gotta try and keep things cool. But it's always nice on Monday mornings, or not Monday morning, Tuesday mornings, just rolling out of bed, like setting my alarm for like 15 minutes before class, throwing on some clothes, and then opening up my computer. So much easier. I feel like I can like actually sleep.
I think it's good for your mental health because college students are so sleep deprived and like, oh my God, deprived of everything. I didn't eat in college. I didn't sleep in college. I was doing so many activities outside of my classes. Like homework would take, I don't know, I slept like 2-3 hours a night. Like I would love to get home at a reasonable hour from class because I would get out of class at 10. And then be able to just like do my homework at home. It would definitely help my mental health.
I sympathize. I had very bad sleep habits when I was in school. Basically, I would get like 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night, and then on the weekends, I would just be passed out until like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And the worst part was I was a teacher's assistant for calculus, which was always an 8 a.m. class. So I had to be like on my game very early in the morning. So that was always fun.
Were you sleeping?
Anyway, in all seriousness though, I do feel like it is pretty nice that, if you're up at like 3 a.m. and you get a bolt of inspiration, you can fill out your discussion.
Mhm.
I definitely have had those kind of moments. I've also had classmates who have commented on that fact. They're like, "Hey, why are you posting at 3 a.m.? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Is anyone okay?" But like,
Did they really need to call you out like that? Like,
well, it lets them hit their word count. Because like in our discussion, it was always like you need to have at least like 2 sentences minimum advised 4 to 8. And so like they would use that. They'd be like, wow, I see that you're posting at this time. Did that like thought keep you up at night or something to segue a sentence out of the way? Ignoring all that stuff. I do feel like from a lot of perspectives, I can definitely see the anxiety thing. I was quite the devil's advocate in business. I was business grad school for all those listening, and I did not like a lot of the practices, so I was always the first to raise my voice. But
Mhm.
I do agree that we probably did hear a lot more from a lot of people that wouldn't have normally responded on those discussions, and I think that was like a very good thing for them. They could just kind of be forced to throw it into the wind, and then everybody else just kind of has to either agree or disagree in a polite fashion.
Mhm.
Um,
so I don't want to get no need to get into specifics, but do you think that you did better or worse with like online classes grade wise?
Look, I got A's in all my classes.
all right, flex on us.
Okay.
I have nothing outside of my college career, so I might as well flex when I was summa cum laude, okay?
Fair enough. Okay. So Megan was super overachiever. No, in all seriousness, I did about as well. Um, I'd say plus or minus 5 points on average. Um, but I will say that some classes I had to struggle to get that grade, and others I kind of coasted by, and it was kind of dependent on the class, the material, and stuff like that.
I was gonna say, was that more of sorry, Trevor, I'm gonna take over for a second. Was that more of the content, Alex, of the class, or do you think that was because of the online aspect of the class?
50-50. The class that I struggled the most in was actually one of my lecture classes.
Hmm.
Um, and normally I very much enjoy lecture classes. Like if I am there, I'm engaged, I can ask questions and stuff. But this one was the guy from New Jersey while we were in upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an environmental course about how to sustainably do business. And this guy would just ramble on in a monotone voice for 3 hours a week. And
Mm.
I would just sit there and like try and take it in. But most of the stuff that he said was like very common sense. It was like, whoa, we should move to using like sustainably sourced materials and stuff like that when we do business. And it's like, well, yeah, of course, if that's how you want to, save the environment, saving the environment is good. Like it's not exactly rocket science. But this man would just drone on, and I would fight to stay awake. I am not proud to say that I have fallen asleep to that man's voice many times over the course of the semester, but it wasn't so much the content as the way he presented it and the fact that his homework would be on entirely different things than
Mm.
what we would have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to blame that more on the professor than anything else. But
Also, just to clarify for my 8 a.m. teacher, because I know she's going to be listening to this, I have not fallen asleep in any of your classes. I've been a good student.
I'm not trying to call you out. I'm
Just
sorry.
gotta throw that out there. It's been 8 a.m.s, but I've been at least pretty conscious during your classes. Don't
To
worry.
be fair, the classes that I had to attend were 7 to 10 at night
Ooh, yeah.
after a day of classes already, because for whatever reason, our business school only operated in the evenings and would package all of our classes, which were like 3-hour blocks, into like 2 days. So when I had classes, I had classes. So it was at the end of a long day full of complicated business stuff, and then just listening to a man talk quietly and monotonously about how we should be, eco warriors and stuff. Just he was like a very unenthusiastic Captain Planet. I know, again, dating myself with references. Anyway.
But yeah, for the most part, in my classes, I've been doing about as good as I would for them like in previous times, except for when we first shifted to the pandemic. All of a sudden, all my classes went really well, but that might have been them easing back because we had this sudden shift. Nobody quite knew what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I know like a lot of teachers kind of backed off, made it a little bit easier because you don't know what's going on at home now.
Yeah, I didn't
I
even consider that.
I picked up, I'd gone back to working and stuff, and they're like, oh well, we gotta maybe loosen up on some of those things. And you're at college, you can be pretty sure that when they're in campus in person, that's what they're going to be doing. But you could have family troubles at home, or
Yeah.
you could have work and stuff. So a lot of people backed off on that case,
Mm.
which definitely helped my grades. But but now we're back to like semi-normal to hybrid. I'm still doing about the same, which is what most of like sources I found. One said that they did worse. One said they're like, oh man, these students are doing like so much work. They're doing like 2 whole points worse on their overall grade. It's like the end of the world. We got to go back in person. Oh my god. And most of them was like, yeah, they did about the same. They're pretty good.
I feel like it's a good thing that the grades stayed more or less the same, within a standard deviation or so of the norm. But like, I also feel like a lot of it is what you're learning and
Yeah.
your learning style, because like discussion worked fine for me, but the classes that I had to take online were stuff that I was already kind of interested in, so it was
Yeah.
easier for me to engage with.
Hmm.
But like I TA'd calculus 1, 2, 3. I did a lot of math. I was mathematics undergrad, went into business, in case anyone was curious. And being in person and being able to step over, to see someone doing work and being able to point out, oh, like, don't forget, a negative sign here, or don't, forget to apply this rule here or something, I felt was very beneficial. And a lot of the people that I helped felt the same way. And you can't really get that in an online class. Like, you could throw up examples on the board and stuff and walk you through a problem, but you can't get all up in someone's business, uh, sorry, I know that sounds pretty rude, but like, you can't walk up to someone and look over their work on an online format and just quickly, point out minor errors that might be leading them astray, or, ask for help. I mean, maybe Zoom has come a long way, but at least as far as I'm aware, you can't really like, quickly just grab someone's attention covertly and, like, ask them if they're having problems or something.
There is a direct message in Zoom, so like the teacher could
Oh, okay.
see someone, but also it's very hard to tell because Zoom is basically just face to face, where the teacher sharing a screen. So it can be hard to see if they're struggling on like writing down a problem and stuff.
Yeah, so I think it's like 50-50 on what you're doing and how you're learning it. And,
Devil's,
like, learning style.
devil's advocate here, as a history major and a theater major, most things are not like problem based, like math. So I feel like history classes are actually pretty great to be online, because I mean, my honors classes was simply reading a book and discussing the book. And I could have done that online and gotten the same exact education as in person. I would have lost nothing, really. So I think it's just, yeah, the subject matter for which an online class is.
Yeah, I was going to say some of the sources were saying like, especially computer-based learning, like computer classes, all computer science had like the easiest time transitioning over, and like nobody had any real issues. When they go into things like biology, where you have like labs, how are you supposed to do an online lab? That's like
I didn't think about
very
that.
rough. So my biology teachers kind of said, we're not doing labs anymore. Go read a book or something.
Now, I don't know if this is in the scope of this, and please let me know if I'm a little off base here,
Mhm.
but did your research talk anything about the, mental health of the teachers and stuff?
That
Because,
was
like, I know that some, like, elementary school teachers and stuff have to do, like, split classroom and online simultaneously, and that's a very taxing thing.
Yeah, one of the sources briefly touched on that. It wasn't really mentioned, but I did throw into my paper just like a little side note, because yeah, especially they're talking about with younger people, people who are English language learners, those who are going from like Spanish primarily to English, who need the extra help, who need extra like time with the teacher and stuff. It was very difficult on them, and especially when transitioning to like during the pandemic when it was so quick and shut down. Most schools didn't check to see if the teachers were even prepared or give them any assistance in this transition. So all teachers had to go out of their way. Like I know my teachers had to like buy a new mic or buy a webcam just so they could interact with their students.
I'm assuming the school didn't pay for those things because our education system is notoriously kind of shoddy in that regard.
Most times they didn't. You could maybe get a try and write off for like taxes or something, but for the most part, nothing really. So that was a big stress, especially during the beginning of the pandemic, was teachers having to adjust to it with the school giving them very little help.
Yeah, I know I kept up with some of my old college professors, one of whom teaches psychology, and they like to do a lot of in person demonstrations and things to spice up your regular 8 a.m. classes to kind of wake people up and get them engaged. And they're like, I wasn't expecting to have to go online when the pandemic first started, but now that I had, it's proved difficult. It's changed up their teaching style and what they had prepared and the rate at which they had to go through it. So
So there's the one last thing, which is, I don't know. Do you guys remember what types of resources you're using, like Google Classroom, Canvas, Moodle for like your online classes?
Blackboard.
Blackboard.
Blackboard was primarily what I used too.
Blackboard's awful too. I'm gonna
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. That interface was something, but when it came to like the online like Zoom style classes, we used some. I want to say we used like Skype's like degenerate cousin. I don't remember what it was, but it was just like off-brand Skype, and it was like supposed to be for our benefit because like it was supposed to be designed for teachers, but it was pretty much just Skype. But I had to install a different program that I definitely thought was laden with viruses.
Yeah, most of my classes have been on Canvas, but they talked about in some college classes when shifting to the online, a lot of teachers fell back on what they knew and resorted to a lot of email usage. I think they said 81% of students at this one university, um, a lot of 81% of the teachers used email as their primary form of communicating with students and didn't use like no Zoom, no Google Classroom, no Blackboard, just email.
That must be hard. I lose track of my emails at work. I
Uh,
could student having multiple classes go through email.
yeah, so
Yeah, I
that
didn't even
was
consider that.
that was a big thing. Was they're like, yeah, a lot of teachers, especially some of the older teachers who aren't as used to the newer technologies,
Mm.
they panicked and went back on what they knew, which was emails. And now imagine, one of your classes, but they just email you links to things or email you a question they have to reply to or something like that.
Ooh,
That
that
would be
sounds dicey.
it would be lost in the other emails I get.
Yeah, so there's still a lot of issues with online learning, but it could be okay in some cases, like they're talked about, especially online for secondary for like people who are working already, like
Mhm.
doing night classes and stuff. But
Yeah.
overall, do you think online classes are a good thing or a bad thing?
I think they're good. I think they're better if you mix. Like if you have like what you said, like kind of a hybrid, or like you have some in-person classes and some online classes. I think there should be options definitely, because you don't know everyone's situations in life. And I went to a primarily commuter school, and sometimes it might be easier for someone to, take a class at home than it is for them to commute to college.
Personally, I'm gonna go with good, but with like a big asterisk next to it, like contingent on a lot of factors. I think it's an overall good thing. I think ideally, if you ask me, the best solution would be, assuming the pandemic is gone and we don't have to worry about a national health crisis, to give students the option. What works better for them? Some people learn better in person, some people learn better at a distance, some people learn better, one way or another. I think it's a positive step forward. I still think it has some kinks that need to be worked out ultimately.
Yeah,
I just think it's more accessible. Like it heightens accessibility, like people who are homebound.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I agree with you, Alex.
Yeah.
it's a good thing, but
Good
it
asterisk.
needs some work.
Yes.
Yeah.
But during this pandemic, that doesn't mean immediately go into fully in person. It works.
No.
It works.
That's why I'm saying when there's not a national health crisis going on, I think giving people an option or allowing, hybrid learning or, utilizing the power of the internet is a good move.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yeah.
it a perfect system? No. Does it work for everyone? No. Is it a good thing that we're starting to experiment with it, even if it's by force? Yes.
Yeah, just because this whole debate got it was like barely talked about and then got sparked up because of the pandemic, and they're like, oh, we gotta get kids back into the schools, or no, online's good enough.
Which is
Online is good enough. Like, don't worry, parents and teachers. Like, your kids are learning, although they might learn better in person. Just don't rush it.
don't rush it.
Well, that's about all I got to talk about. So
Wow, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you all for
Yeah,
coming and talking to
fun
me,
chatting.
taking some time out of your day to talk about your experiences with online classes.
Thank you for having us, Trevor.
And if you need to talk to us about any more of our experiences, you'll know we'll be more than happy to come back on.
It's been fun.
It's been real. It's been fun. Bye bye.
Bye.